Welcome to my film review of Rocketman. So this is the Elton John biography type movie, the Elton John version of the Queen movie, aka Bohemian Rhapsody. So, I'm afraid these came out in the wrong order. Big problem. Sorry, Elton. If you'd have brought this movie out before the Queen movie, we wouldn't have had Queen to compare it by. But I'm afraid compared to Queen, this movie just sucks. Sucks is harsh. It's very harsh. It's not that bad, but it's just not that great either. I mean, maybe it's because I'm not a big Elton John fan. Full disclosure, I'm not a huge Elton John fan. I didn't realise how big a Queen fan I was until I watched Bohemian Rhapsody. And you think, oh my God, how is Queen not one of my favourite bands? You realise how many amazing hits they've got. And you go into the Elton John movie thinking you're going to experience exactly the same thing, those toe tapping, oh my God, yeah, hey, I forgot about this movie, this song, oh, and this one, oh, wow. And nah, none of it. There was a couple from the advert that you've probably seen. They're in it, and those are the greatest hits, what you see in the advert. So like I say, maybe it's just because I'm not an Elton John fan, but this movie just wasn't anywhere near as good as the Queen movie. I mean, the Queen movie, I couldn't wait to go back to the cinema and see it again. I saw it a few times at the cinema. I even went down and saw it on the IMAX, which required travelling 60 miles. So I was a huge fan of the Queen movie, and I loved the way the Queen movie was portrayed. I can't remember what score I gave that, but it had to be, I'd be surprised if it wasn't at least a 9 out of 10, maybe even slightly higher. But the Elton John movie, I don't know how true to life it is, so as with the Queen movie, I'm going to assume, I know the Queen movie wasn't true to life, but I'm not a big enough Queen fan or an Elton John fan to know what would be manipulation of the truth and what would be hard fact. So I'm going to assume that the Elton John story is fact, and therefore I'm going to discuss points in it, obviously without giving anything away, based on the movie being true to life. And in that regard, the movie, in many respects, was fantastic. If we don't compare it to Queen, if we forget that Queen existed and was such a spectacular movie, and this is just a standalone story about Elton John, I couldn't give a hoot about Elton John. If I heard one of his songs on the radio, I'd probably turn over and put something else on. I've never in my life deliberately played any of his music. So that tells you how much I'm not in the slightest bit interested in Elton John. However, this movie was really, really interesting. Learning about Elton John's life was actually incredibly fun and satisfying and interesting. But if you then compare it to Queen, it didn't work as well. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what I did like and what I didn't like. So with the Queen movie, what you had is a load of songs that are portrayed in a way that they would be naturally. So it's kind of like the song is sang in normal instance. Whereas with this Elton John movie, the songs were played out like a musical. At times it was reminding me of Grease, and at times it was reminding me of, God, I've not seen too many musicals. Like Mary Poppins. That was what it reminded me of early on. Mary Poppins, when they break out into song, everybody all of a sudden breaks out into song. And it turns into this big, happy, skippy, tap your feet musical. And Queen, if you remember, wasn't at all played like that. When you heard a Queen song, it was because they were performing it in the studio or because they were performing it on stage. A lot of the time in the Elton John movie, when they were performing a song, it was done very much like a musical. And, and for me, I don't like musicals, The only musicals I like are the ones that you saw so many times as a kid, like Grease and Mary Poppins, that you end up liking them. Maybe they were just really good musicals. But I've never gone to see any of the Mamma Mias. You know, even though I love ABBA music, I don't like musicals. And what spoiled Elton John for me was that the music parts were often played out in a musical format, and that just didn't do it for me. I was kind of like, I couldn't wait for the song bit to end and just to get back to telling the story. So the film breaks down in two parts. In terms of the songs, I never tapped my feet. I didn't notice anybody around me tapping my feet. I was at a premiere, an unlimited screening for Cineworld members. We get to see it one day earlier than its normal release. It was a pretty packed cinema, and like I say, no one was tapping the feet or anything like that. And like I say, when the songs were being played, you kind of, personally, I couldn't wait for them to end. It was played they were played out more often than not as a musical, and it just sucked. There was times when he was playing the songs on stage, and those moments were actually pretty good, you know, because you're seeing him in gig format, and yeah, it was good. But most of the time, half of the time at least, it wasn't great. So that's the music side of things. I would have quite happily cut out pretty much all of the music playing scenes. The music doesn't do it for me, and it was also played in musical format. So this was like the worst musical I've ever seen in my life. That's the part of the movie that I hate. Now, if we flip it and then look at the storyline element, again, I don't know whether this is completely true to life as to how Elton John's life actually played out, but what I did enjoy was the drama of this story. It's an incredible story. I mean, everyone knows who Elton John is. He's a hugely successful artist, you know, that's still going in his latter years. So he's obviously had a very long, successful career. You can't question that he's a talented guy. But when you actually see this movie, you realise just how talented he was. He is spectacularly talented. And it's fascinating seeing how his talent grows and blossoms from a young age. That I really, really enjoyed. I really did enjoy seeing how this incredible talent came to life and the adversity that he had to deal with whilst emerging as this talented musician. So, you know, just as a story, even though I'm not interested in Elton John, I found the story of Elton John very, very gripping and incredibly enjoyable. But the music part just let it down. And the other thing about this movie was it wasn't just a movie about music. Queen was definitely a movie about music. Elton John, Rocketman, it was a splash of mental health. You know, it's Mental Health Month right now in May, and particularly I think it's also Mental Health Week in the UK. And I just thought that was quite a fitting time for this movie to come out, because for me, all of the way through, I'm just thinking, wow, this is a story of a journey, and it entails a mental health story and a journey. It maybe wasn't supposed to be solely played out in that way, but that was certainly a big message that I took from this movie. And I enjoyed that. I appreciated the fact that it was a movie tackling some mental health issues. And it did it maybe in a coincidental way, but for me it worked, and I liked it. So yeah, as much as this movie in on the whole I didn't love it, I did enjoy learning about Elton John. So I think I can summarize it that. Who's this movie for? If, like me, you don't give a stuff about Elton John, I wouldn't pay to see this at the cinema. If you've got a Cineworld Unlimited pass like me, go and see it. Yeah, by all means, you know, it's worth a watch, but don't expect it to be fantastic. And a lot of the time you're just going to be, come on, get through this scene, this is boring. But a lot of the time it's also brilliant. It had similarities to the Queen movie. Gay characters in this movie thankfully didn't all have moustaches, which I found really creepy in the Queen movie. There wasn't quite the same stereotypes in this movie, which was refreshing, and that made it a lot better. But this movie is basically, I don't even know if you're a hardcore Elton fan what you'd think of this. I'd be interested to know. So I think hardcore Elton fans, you're going to go and watch this movie, and like any Queen fan, you've probably been looking forward to it for months. So you're going to go and see it, but I don't know what you're going to think of it. If you're a Queen fan, if you're an Elton John fan, let me know what you thought of this movie. Did it disappoint you, or did you love it? I think you're going to find it disappointing, I'm afraid. And for people that aren't interested in Elton John, but, you know, like I say, I'd struggle to recommend that you pay to see this at the cinema. Go on a buy one, get one free day. Go when it's as cheap as possible. Don't rush out to see this and pay full £10 per ticket. I think you'll be massively disappointed. So, sorry, but that's how I feel about it. What would I score this out of 10? Oh, 6.5 probably. But that's a lot of it is because of the musical element. Ugh, I hate musicals. Just made me want to shut my eyes and just wish it was over, some of the scenes. So I think I might even be being generous giving it a 6.5. But no, I like the storyline. The storyline about his actual life was good. So yeah, 6.5. It's going to recover itself to a 6.5. Popcorn muncher, yeah, there's plenty of noise. You can eat your popcorn. Don't think it matters where in the cinema that you sit for this one. So I think we've covered all the main points there. Bit of a disappointment. Almost goes as far as to say huge disappointment, I'm afraid. But that's just me. Let me know your thoughts. Did you even enjoy this movie? Got a feeling you might not. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. It's not as good as Queen. It's not as good as Queen. But anyway, thanks for tuning into this review. Sorry, Elton John. You're a great person. You've lived a remarkable life. At the end, the end scenes, there are bits at the end, so don't rush out straight away. There are clips where it shows Elton John in some of the costumes that were worn in the movie, so you can see that the movie has taken from some actual real costumes that he was wearing in real life, which is good. That's nice to see. And also, get your reading eyes tuned in fast, because at the end it shows some text comes up on screen, you know, this is what's happening now and how long this has been happened for, blah blah blah, you know what I mean, those kind of bits that come up at the end. My god, you don't have time to read them. They are up and off in a flash, so have yourself ready to focus in and read those bits, because they're on way too fast. It's annoying. It's ridiculous, to be honest. So look out for those scenes at the end. And that covers everything I need to talk about in this review. So thanks for listening. I hope this has encouraged you to either save your money and see something better, or maybe lower your expectations if you're an Elton John fan, so that you don't get too disappointed at the movie, and hopefully giving you an understanding of what to expect. It's a fascinating story of Elton John, but I didn't like the way the movie was played out. But like I say, Elton John had some incredibly adverse things to deal with in his life, and it makes me so grateful for, I can't say because I don't want to give a spoiler away, but you know, it makes you reflect on your life and think, God, I'm so lucky to have what he didn't have. Wow, he's come through some tough circumstances, the poor guy. He has done well not to end up like Kurt Cobain sort of thing, you know. So really, I'm kind of talking myself into saying that it's a great film again. It's a fantastic story, but a poor film. There we go. Although the guy who played it, you know, he played a good part, Eddie the Eagle. You know, he played it well. Can't diss him. Great story, poor movie. That sums it up, basically. So thanks for listening. Check out my other reviews. Been to see loads of stuff recently, getting everything covered. There's a whole new bunch of movies coming out this week. Rocketman, Aladdin, and I'm sure there's another one, Secret Life of Pets 2. 3 blockbuster movies there. I'll have them all reviewed this week, so check out my reviews and save your money for what matters at the cinema. Thanks for listening, and see you soon. Goodbye.